The Trojan War begins the way many disasters do, not with an army, not with a plan, but with a personal choice that spiraled out of control. A love affair, or perhaps an abduction, or maybe a political insult disguised as romance. However you tell it, the story starts with two people and ends with a city in flames. For nearly 3,000 years, people have argued about whether the Trojan War really happened or whether it lives only in myth. But what makes the story powerful is not just the question of truth. It's how closely it mirrors real human behavior: pride, jealousy, loyalty, revenge, and how a small spark can ignite total destruction. According to ancient tradition, the war began when Paris, a prince of Troy, traveled to Greece and fell in love with Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. Or, depending on who you believe, he kidnapped her. Either way, Helen left Greece and went to Troy with Paris, taking royal treasures with her. Helen was said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. But the war that followed was never really about beauty. It was about honor. In the ancient world, honor was everything. Menelaus was humiliated. His household had been violated, his status challenged. To let the insult pass would make him look weak. So he called on his allies, including his powerful brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae. Together, they summoned the greatest warriors of Greece and prepared for war. What followed was not a quick raid. It was a massive expedition. A coalition of Greek kings crossed the sea with hundreds of ships and laid siege to Troy, a wealthy and fortified city on the coast of what is now Turkey. And then, incredibly, they stayed. The war dragged on for 10 long years. Most of what we think we know about the conflict comes from the epic poems attributed to Homer, especially the Iliad. These poems are not history books. They are stories shaped by memory, exaggeration, and drama. Gods interfere. Heroes fight like demigods. Fate speaks through prophecy, and yet, beneath the myth, there are echoes of real events. Troy, for example, was not invented. Archaeologists have identified the ancient city of Troy, also known as Sarlik, and it shows signs of repeated destruction around the time the Trojan War was said to occur. Roughly the late Bronze Age. Layers of burned buildings, collapsed walls, and weapons hint that the city did face violent conflict. Whether that conflict matches Homer's war exactly is still debated, but Troy did fall. Inside the story, the war becomes a stage for unforgettable characters. There is Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior, almost invincible but driven by pride and rage. There is Hector, Troy's defender, fighting not for glory but for his family and city. There are kings who argue, warriors who sulk, and soldiers who die by the thousands for causes they barely understand. The war is brutal and personal. Battles are fought face to face. Spears break shields, blood soaks the dust. There is no clean victory. When Achilles kills Hector and drags his body through the dirt, it is not portrayed as heroic. It is ugly, fueled by grief and revenge. The story does not hide the cost of war, it lingers on it. And then there is the most famous moment of all, the Trojan horse. After 10 years of fighting, the Greeks appear to give up. They sail away, leaving behind a massive wooden horse at the gates of Troy. The Trojans argue about what to do with it. Some think it's a trap, others believe it's an offering to the gods. Against better judgment, they drag it into the city. That night, Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse emerge, open the gates, and Troy is destroyed from within. But was the Trojan horse real? That question has fascinated historians for centuries. There is no direct archaeological proof of a literal giant wooden horse. But many scholars believe the story may be symbolic. The horse could have been a siege engine or a ship, or a metaphor for betrayal. Others suggest it represents deception itself, the idea that Troy fell not because it was weaker, but because it trusted the wrong thing. What matters is not whether the horse existed exactly as described, but what the story captures, that cities often fall from the inside. When Troy burned, it was total destruction. Men were slaughtered. Women and children were enslaved. the city was erased. Survivors were scattered across the Mediterranean. Even the victors did not escape tragedy. Many Greek heroes died on the journey home. Others returned to betrayal, madness, or murder. Victory did not bring peace. That is one of the Trojan War's quiet lessons: no one truly wins. The story has lasted because it works on many levels at once. It is a love story, but also a warning about desire. It is an adventure, but also an anti-war tale. It celebrates heroism while exposing its emptiness. It blends myth with memory so smoothly that separating them becomes almost impossible, and maybe that's the point. The Trojan War lives where myth meets archaeology, where poetry meets burned stone, where gods fade and human choices remain. It reminds us that wars are often born from pride, escalated by alliances, and justified with stories that sound noble until the bodies pile up. Thousands of years later, we still tell this story. Not because it is ancient, but because it is familiar. A personal insult becomes a national cause. A long conflict becomes normal, deception becomes strategy. And by the time the walls fall, no one remembers how it all started, only that everything has been lost. The Trojan War may or may not have happened exactly as Homer described it. But something very much like it happened. A city fell, a world changed, and humanity learned, once again, that the most dangerous wars often begin with very human mistakes. That is why the story refuses to die.